Hello and welcome to the Radio Tech Guys podcast, a podcast covering the tech that drives the radio industry. As always, I'm Alex Linger, and on the other side of this super secret underground audio tunnel we have going on here is Chris Moran. Hello, Chris.
It's the audio underground. Hello, Alex.
How are you, buddy? What's going on?
Oh, man, I'm doing great. Spent a whole day outside at Stonewall Resort on the water today,
Nice.
which might explain, trying to figure out why I'm red and raccoon-eyed if you're watching on the Google Hangout stream. But yeah, it was a good day. What about you?
That's awesome. Lazy day for me. Did the church thing and then came home and did nothing.
Well, there's value in that.
Wonderful. I'm not complaining one bit. Not one bit. Okay, coming up on the show today, boy, this will be a good one. This is a big topic. Looking forward to this. We're going to talk about audio over IP and IP audio infrastructure and how to bring your station into the 21st century. And it's going to be good. We're going to have lots of good advice and bad advice. Maybe we'll tell you which is which.
Or let you figure it out.
Or yeah, you can try it and let us know which is which. Hey, before we get rolling, also, we will have a beer and a wine review for you later in the show. So for those of you that enjoy that, stick around. We'll have it. How can you get in touch with us? We want you to get in touch with us. Please do. Lots of avenues. You can email us at ask, A-S-K, at theradiotechguys.com. That's ask at theradiotechguys.com. You can also call the show right now. This is untested, but you can help us test it. You can call right now at 304-284-2020. One more time, 304-284-2020. You can also join us via video, if you'd like, on our Google Hangout. If you go to our website at theradiotechguys.com, you can click on the Google Hangout link, and you can be part of the show in living color.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting. Of course, the standard ways exist too. The social media route, you can follow us on Twitter at Radio Tech Guys. We can answer questions that way, and also on Facebook at facebook.com/The Radio Tech Guys. But I think the coolest part of these two is still the Google Hangouts route through our website, because that'd be super fun.
I agree.
To be able to see you. Yeah, so let's jump into stuff tonight. IP audio infrastructure, and this has been a topic that has been very top of mind for us lately because of the amount of studio builds that we've been working on.
Yep.
Beyond just the one that we've talked about, which is a single kind of talk show studio across town in Morgantown, we're also building out another building. We're adding on 5 new Axia studios to an existing 2. Upgrading this cluster from various radio mixers and airwaves of various vintage, bringing them into an all IP infrastructure, which is pretty exciting. But it made me start thinking again about every time we build these new facilities, it made me start thinking again about how we have to do the planning for these things and how much really goes into the forethought and the documentation and things before you even purchase the equipment to make sure that you're getting things that make the most sense and all the parts and pieces that you need. So I wanted to talk about it from the very beginning stages of developing your IP audio infrastructure and kind of all the way through laying that stuff out. And so when we start thinking about deploying a new audio over IP system in a facility, in a new installation, or an upgrade of an existing one of the first things we have to think about is how many studios we're going to have, what devices are going to go in there, and then how we're going to IP address these devices in a way that we can keep track of as the plant gets bigger and we add more studios and whatever else happens. So a couple of things that are absolutely critical in any IP infrastructure with audio is IP addressing is absolutely critical, and channel numbering of your audio channels in terms of not duplicating either of those things is of utmost importance, right, Alex?
Oh my goodness. So important. So important. And, to reiterate, the planning that goes in before you ever start installing the equipment, I think that we can't say that enough. You've got to put all this on paper and plan way ahead, way ahead. We've run into it several times where you start your IP address scheme and you don't think ahead, and suddenly the patterns that you've created, or the scheme that you've created doesn't work anymore, and then you've got a huge world of hurt to try to figure out how to get yourself around that. So what do you
Exactly.
put on the screen, Chris?
Well, I wanted to show everybody this for a second. This is a document. This is an Excel workbook that I use every time we're developing new things. As you can see, it's for the Acme Broadcasting Company out of New York. We've taken this document and made it safe for public dissemination. But this is there's two tabs in this document that I use for every new studio build. The first tab is an IP address document, and what you can see here is we have a section at the top where we'll lay out all of our switches and other network appliances that are on our Axia network. And in this specific building, we might be using 10.0.1. whatever as our private subnet, and we'd have all of our switches here. And then as you can see, as we go through studio numbers, studio 1, all of the IP addresses in that studio, the last octet or the last cluster here in an IP address called an octet it starts with a number relative to the studio. So everything in studio 1 is 10.0.1.1 something. Studio 2 is 10.0.1.2 something. And these go consistently through all of the studios until we run out of studios. We figure we don't have a plant that has 20 studios, so we're typically safe to begin in the 200s for our wire room, STL room, other Axia equipment or IP audio equipment that lives there. What's cool about this, if you follow this IP address scheme, each one of these devices in each studio is going to have some in and out or inputs, I guess, or sources that are going to require channel numbers. So we extend this theme on into how we assign channel numbers as well. So we'll flip over to the second tab here and I'll show you some things about that. This is Studio 1. And if you'll remember from the IP address document, the power station was .11 and the IO of the power station was .13. And so what we do is we take those last two digits of the IP address and make them the first two numerals in the Axia channel number. So like everything on the power station from Studio 1 starts with 11 as its channel number until we get up here to 12. But then the IO section of that power station, which was the IP address of 10.0.1.13, starts at 131. This is how we can assure ourselves that throughout all of the studios that we build throughout here and all of the nodes, that none of our channel numbers or IP addresses overlap. So this is an Excel workbook that we're going to make available here. There'll be a link to this Excel document that we will put inside the notes of this YouTube video and also in the show notes of the episode, that you guys can download this document and use it yourself, customize it however you want to.
Yep. We should probably say, and if you've watched our previous podcast, you've probably gathered at this point, or I should say listen to, I'm sorry. You've probably gathered at this point that we are an Axia company. That's really what we've settled on and standardized on. We do actually have a facility that is Wheatstone. Unfortunately, I haven't gotten my hands on it a lot. I just really don't have a lot of experience with it. What we do know about it is, I mean, it's excellent gear.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with it. We've just settled on Axia, and it makes more sense for us to continue that. We can swap equipment. We understand it better. It's just kind of where we've settled. So I cannot speak to the IP addressing of Wheatstone. I'm assuming it's very similar.
Yeah. There's IP address and channel numbers and things like that. It is very similar. Yeah, our one cluster that has a WheatNet system. I'm like Alex. I've only spent a marginal amount of time with it, but it works very, very well. And
the users in that building love it. I mean, they have no complaints about it. And the users that we have using Axia love it and have no complaints about it. So it's really, you have to get your hands on both and just sort of see what you like better. There are going to be caveats. There are certain things that one system does better than the other, but you just really have to decide what's going to work best for your facility.
That's right. So in addition to laying out the documentation ahead of time, which is so incredibly important in terms of IP addresses and channel numbering that we just touched on there, another important step in the planning, I think, that because there are a handful of options from both major audio over IP for radio manufacturers in terms of the studio engine that drives each specific studio and also the control surfaces that you can use and whatnot. It's important to think through the amount of IO that your inputs and outputs that you're going to need in each studio. And there's stuff that may not seem top of mind when you're planning this. It's more than just the things you can see, like how many microphones, how many CD players, how many automation system play lines am I going to have, which you got to think in terms also that's probably switching away from analog playback and recording from your automation system to a live wire solution there as well. So there won't be any need for physical IO for those. But there are little gotcha things that you need to think about in control rooms too, like people forget about how are you going to handle your control room monitors, how are you going to handle your Q bus. This is down the road in another edition of IP configuration, which we're going to do a whole walkthrough as we build the studio at our downtown office, and we'll get into some of these tricks that we're doing in terms of vmixing our monitors and things like that. But you got to think about that, and you also, things change a little bit in this world. Like if you have 3 guest positions in this talk show studio, for instance, now I need 3 discrete outputs from my IP audio system to drive each of their headphones separately, because now they have choices of what they're listening to and how they're controlling their volume through ear, however you decide to do. There's a myriad of options, but we want to make sure to think about up front that we have enough IO in each control room to do what we want to do as we build it, and then plan that accordingly and document it in our document as we go. Yep. Up front, instead of trying to do it all on the backside. So once that's all documented and you've decided what engines you want to put in and what control surfaces you're using and how your studios are going to start to lay out, one of the things that we've discovered recently when we started installing these is that instead of following the manufacturer's recommendations of truly isolating our IP audio network physically as its own thing separated from the rest of our networks, we have actually started combining them so that on any switch port anywhere in our facility, we can plug in a device, and it can be an Axia port or it can be just a normal LAN port. In fact, Alex and I this past week produced a video that's on our YouTube channel and on our website. There's a walkthrough of configuring an Axia, a Cisco 2960 switch for Axia, but also it's set up in a way that it's has multiple VLANs, and Alex is going to talk about that a little bit and how we're doing that.
I should say it's probably the best video on YouTube currently of all of them.
That's
ever. You might disagree. All right.
Yeah. Average at best.
Oh, come on.
The open's cool.
The open is pretty cool. Had to wow them with something up front. I think, Chris, this is a great time for you to tell a story, a cautionary tale, if you will, of what happens when you don't pay attention to IP addressing in your Axia environment.
Oh, I'll tell the story.
We need to find some scary music to play.
One of the reasons that it's so critical, weird things start to happen in a multicast audio environment like Axia or WheatNet when you have conflicting IP addresses and channel numbers then that are also conflicting. We had a situation one night where we were installing a new studio. Actually, we were upgrading an old analog studio in one of our buildings that had not been converted to Axia yet. ironically, this problem that I'm going to talk about had nothing to do with the studio that we were
Not
building. It just happened that we were in the building at the time when things kind of went crazy. But one of my friends and coworkers and podcast co-hosts had recently been working
Who
on.
was that?
Well, it might have been you. Was working on a production room machine actually, and we'd been having some trouble with it on the network and whatever, and he had to go in and assign an IP address to this network card, and had a slightly dyslexic moment and reversed the number in the last octet. It was a 10.0.3. Whatever address in the last.
It was supposed to be 16, and I made it 61.
Yep, that's what it was. It was supposed to be 16. He made it 61. And some weird things started happening. We just happened to notice that we were having trouble connecting to one of these studio's power stations. We were trying to get a source in for the new studio, and stuff wouldn't work and whatever. So we're in the room, and one of these jocks comes running in from one of the other studios and goes like, the eyes were huge, and said like, the president of our company's on the phone, and he's freaking out because there's audio on the stream. There's just like one open mic from this other room on the stream, the web stream, straight onto the stream, and they're talking about things they shouldn't be, like about our owner and other things. And so Alex and I looked at each other and thought, okay, well, give me just a minute. So Alex went and talked to the president, and we started digging in a little bit. And long story short, what had happened was, when he mis-IP'd the workstation in the production room, he'd given it the IP address of the power station of one of our studios. And so what was supposed to be program one from one of our studios routed to the web stream actually ended up being just a microphone input, just straight from the production room, just raw, straight microphone to the web stream. And so, but it took us, I mean, we dug that around for an hour or more, trying to track down what had happened there. So it's part of the reason that planning is just, you've got to get it on paper or on a spreadsheet or on a Google Doc or whatever up front.
Several lessons were learned that night. Number one, check your IP addresses. And number two, every mic is always hot.
Exactly. You just cannot talk in a studio full of open mics about things that you're not ready for everybody to hear. That is a definite lesson.
Lots of lessons learned.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh boy.
So tell me more about the VLAN tagging and configuring these switches to get how we go about combining our IP network with the rest of our building network.
Yeah. So obviously, Axia, if you look at their documentation, they're going to tell you that your Axia network, your Axia LAN, should live on an island. It should be a closed environment. And we agree with that. I mean, that is the most perfect, cleanest way to allow Axia to function. We had a unique situation, and I'm sure we're not the first ones to think about this, and we absolutely won't be the last ones. We have an existing facility in Morgantown, West Virginia, that it was kind of our, I keep saying was, it's like the building exploded. It's still there. Everything's still working. It's our headquarters. So all of our internet ISPs come in there. Our PRIs for phone lines come in there. And it's also where our Axia environment lives. We were building a new corporate headquarters. Also is home to a sister company that does video production. But it also is going to house basically a TV studio, radio for TV, if you will. That would be an Axia environment as well. So we decided early on that we didn't want to create a new closed Axia environment at this building. And we also didn't want to have to buy new internet service and, get it on our corporate network and all that kind of stuff. Physically, it's only like 1.5 miles from our existing building. So we worked with a local ISP here who leased us some dark fiber that we lit ourselves.
With a flashlight?
super high powered flashlight, and we have to have a guy stand there and turn it on and off constantly. It's a high paying job. Anyway, so we lit it ourselves, and it was very easy, of course, to extend our business network over there and put in our IP phones and have phone lines and all that kind of good stuff. But how do we get our Axia network there as well on the same link? We asked that question for a long time before we got it all figured out. And I should say, before I tell you what we did, Telos, the Axia, or the company that has Axia, was immensely helpful in telling us, what we need to think about and how this configuration should look. Of course, we got some help from we have some excellent friends in the IT consulting world, and we got some help from them too. What we figured out, what we were able to do using VLAN tagging, most of you are probably familiar with the term VLAN. Every Cisco switch by default has a VLAN. It's VLAN 1, and most people won't even change that. In a closed Axia environment, you wouldn't. It's just going to be VLAN 1. But if you assign VLAN numbers to all of your various networks, your Axia network, your business LAN, as we call it, we have a specific VLAN just for Wi-Fi. We have a VLAN for voice. Once all of those are tagged, once all of those have a VLAN number, we can then, with our Cisco router and our Cisco switches, assign all of those VLANs to all of those switches, and then individually tell each port on the switch what VLAN it's going to function as. And you can already tell what that allows us to do. We can then tell a single switch port to be an Axia port, just Axia. But then the port right beside it is a business LAN port. And the port right beside it is a Wi-Fi enabled VLAN port. So then essentially that allows us to carry all of those networks on one link across town, and then sort of break it back out once we get there by tagging individual ports.
So effectively, though, I mean, really what that empowered us to do before at our original studio building, we had 2 or 3 Axia only switches on this one physical network, and then we had 5, 6, 7, I don't know, switches on our business LAN throughout the building. And then in between them, we had a 28 Cisco 2011 router, the block multicast. They just kind of sat right in the middle, and that was the gateway of all the Axia devices. And then we told our main router, like, hey, if you're looking for the Axia network, go through. So it was just kind of broken by this router.
And all that allowed us to do was get to web interfaces of Axia equipment from the business LAN. And also we could get internet to Axia devices or Axia IP addresses.
Right. So no audio could traverse. I mean, no audio was available on the other side. Effectively, what this VLAN tagging setup let us do, in addition to the link across the fiber to Spruce Street now, I mean, to the other building now, it allowed Spruce Street is our nickname for it because it's on Spruce Street. But it let all of the switches in the existing studio building become whatever we wanted them to be. So now in our office, we have a switch in our office. We want to turn up an Axia device. We just tell it to the switch and say, like, by the way, this is the Axia VLAN on port 13 or whatever. And you plug a node or a selector node or whatever into port 13, and suddenly we have Axia audio on that port.
Yep.
Freed up. I mean, it's the flexibility that allows is tremendous, and relatively low risk. I mean, I heard someone on another podcast the other day talking really strongly about the importance of segregating them, and like you said, completely agree. His point was mainly that in terms of troubleshooting, it makes things a lot easier when that's one layer that's missing. His other point was security. So there's 2 things. I like secure your network is the first thing. Like, don't let people in from the outside who shouldn't be, and you're pretty much going to be okay there. And we can also it still would be relatively for us just topographically the way things are laid out to say like we only have a handful of Axia devices on these other switches, and we have, I mean, we would still have we could troubleshoot still relatively easily,
Okay.
is what I'm saying. The trade-off for us, it was a no-brainer, mainly because of the link to the corporate headquarter building. Like, it was a no-brainer to go ahead and combine these and make them into uh, one network topology. No-brainer.
Yeah, I completely agree. You've got to think, if you get outside of the radio world, if you're just in the corporate environment in a large, medium to large company, this is something that they do on a regular basis. Forget the specialized Axia, the audio over IP scenario. Essentially, all that is a separate LAN. Big corporate environments have dozens and dozens. I'm assuming that seems like a lot, but you'd have multiple LANs all over your building, and the reason for that is so that you can apply different settings, URL filtering and that sort of stuff to various subnets, various VLANs. It's exactly the same thing. So you don't. There is no security risk by letting all of these devices, commingle on one switch. There's absolutely no security risk. There's no more security risk, I should say, than any other day.
Right. Exactly. So to recap, then what we're going to do is we're going to post the Excel workbook here with this blog post, or with this podcast post, so you can download it for yourself and start planning for your IP audio environment. And we'll make sure to get that up there. And do check out at the radiotechguys.com website. Do check out, there's a YouTube video we posted this week that covers just what we're talking about now in terms of how we configured our switches to handle multiple VLANs and put all of our networks on the same one. It's pretty cool stuff.
Yeah. And keep your eyes on that YouTube channel. We're gonna work like madmen to populate that. We're gonna try to get
2 a week
up. Yes,
is that right? 2 a week is what we're. Did I not mention that to you? Yes.
Well, that's good.
we're gonna work towards populating that YouTube channel with 2 actual like hands-on walkthrough type videos every week on all kinds of topics surrounding radio technology. So it should be pretty awesome.
If you get on the ground floor now, you'll sort of get to watch the studio be built from the ground up, and it'll be fun. We'll show you all the little things that we do that hopefully make it work.
So get your questions to us still. We're about halfway through here. You can send us an email now at ask@theradiotechguys.com. Ask@theradiotechguys.com. You can also call us live right now at 304-284-2020. That's 304-284-2020. Or you can go to theradiotechguys.com, click on there's a story on the front page about recording this podcast, and in it you will find a Google Hangouts link that you can click and join us by video, actually, on our Google Hangouts YouTube channel. Wow. And get your question in by video. We would certainly love to talk to you and answer any questions that you have. Hey, I want to respond to something. 2 things I want to say, and then you can comment on these 2.
Thanks.
We had a comment. We had a comment about last week's topic. We talked about Next Radio a lot and kind of the coolness of it, and some of the things it does, and for FM and whatnot, the interactive experience, whatever. And someone had wrote in on the website and just kind of said, because Next Radio is part of their national ad campaign, though, one of their big selling points for them is that in the event of an emergency, if the cellular data networks are down, you can still listen to your FM stations on your phone with the Next Radio app. And that's like a big emergency thing, get the information you need and whatever. The point was made that in the event of an emergency, in most of these smaller market towns, there's not going to be any news and information on FM because they just don't have the people there on the FM. Well, so his case was like our news people were on the AMs, and the only people covering things are TV stations, and there's no real news and whatever. Okay. So I have 2 things I just wanted to respond to about that. One is that I think that's not Next Radio's problem. The problem Next Radio is solving in that case is that if the data network is down, you can listen to the FM.
Yes.
If there's nobody or no availability in your market for any news and information about the emergency on FM, that's the broadcaster's problem.
Yes.
It's a bigger issue than Next Radio can't do anything about that. And I would challenge the fact that that's not an all across the board small market thing. Where all of our markets are small that we work in our company. We have 32 radio stations across like 7 markets. And when we had the floods in June, the big floods in West Virginia in June killed 23 or 24 people. I mean, it was a huge deal. More than one of our markets on multiple FMs were on the air with like continuous coverage from our AMs with our own people. I'm just saying that's not a global small market. It is a problem, but at the very least, you're interrupting for EAS alerts, right? I mean, there's alerts coming through automatically. Or you're required to be. And if you can still hear that on your phone when the cellular networks are out, that's a benefit.
Yeah, that's a primary obligation. That's an FCC obligation to be on the air broadcasting during an event of that magnitude. Now, we work. I'm going to say this: we work for an exceptional company, so we have people that do go way above and beyond. Sleep in the buildings for days, and and they do a fantastic job. But like Chris said, that it's not the platform's responsibility to have people to get that information out. So, I don't think that belittles what Next Radio is capable of. Listen to a different station.
Right. Exactly. So I wanted to point that out. The other thing I wanted to encourage everybody to do is do check out the radiotechguys.com. There's a couple of blog posts. Alex wrote one this week and I wrote one just yesterday about another topic that we're going to be covering pretty extensively over the next 6 or 7 months. Is a lot of stations are turning up these FM translators for their AMs because of the new AM revitalization, basically rule relaxation that has occurred here.
How do you really feel about this, Chris?
Was I not clear? I wrote a blog post yesterday that I just thought, I mean, I'm all, if I put my broadcaster hat on, like my station group, my company guy hat, I'm all for these translators in terms of, let me rephrase that. I'm all for finding new homes for AM content to go to, because I'm also all for shutting down AM. Yeah. Which is exactly what the path, if we're not seeing that clearly yet by all of these things that the commission is doing, like they're working rapidly towards a path where AM doesn't exist as a technology anymore. But my blog that I wrote yesterday, this is something that's bothered me a lot lately, as I've watched us get ready to turn up second adjacent FM channels in market with other like class A's that are already in the market. It's crazy the things, and it's hypocritical, I think, as broadcasters to stand up and be cheerleaders for these when just 8 or 9 years ago we were so vehemently opposed to what the LPFM movement was doing because of technical reasons. And there's actually a couple quotes in there from NAB executive who was like, hey, we can't do anything with these third adjacents. I mean, we'll break the laws of physics and nothing will ever work. And that's paraphrasing. But anyway, it's a blog post that I wrote that it's something that we'll be talking a lot about these translators, but about the hypocrisy really of broadcasters as it comes to the technical side of these things. But we'd love for you to check that out, read about it, comment, and start some dialogue. We just want to talk about these things that are big topics in the broadcast industry here as we get going.
Can I bring up a topic that we don't have on our script here?
But you color coded it so nicely. Yes, but go ahead.
Here's a piece of technology news. This is not necessarily radio specific. Well, it's really not at all, but there's a use scenario that I think we could talk about here. Big news out about Snapchat. Love it or hate it. I think it's arguable to say that it's a big part of our social network environment these days. All the kids are doing it. So everybody remembers Google Glass, I'm assuming. Do you remember Google Glass?
Oh yeah, well, it's only been a couple of years. Yeah, well, my brother-in-law had Google Glass.
Well, he's one of about 6 people.
Right.
It flopped, and now they market it as it's for the elite.
I see.
Yeah.
Well, I'll let Chet know that he's elite.
Yeah, boy, I'm telling you. No, it was a tremendous flop. Well, now Snapchat has decided to get in on that game because Google did so well with it. They've come out with these Snapchat glasses. I forget what they're calling them. That do essentially the same thing. They record short snippets of video to upload to Snapchat. The reason I'm bringing this up, I want your feedback from a broadcaster point of view, specifically news outlets. What do you think about the movement? I shouldn't even say the movement, but really just the culture change of what would you call it? Users really getting the news out there.
Oh yeah, kind of the CNN U report things, and
Exactly that
yeah.
model.
Well, I think
Because
it's in.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but I think people don't even realize necessarily that they're getting the news out to people. They just see something happen and shoot it with their phone and upload it. And I want to get everyone's take on this. Email us, let us know what you think. Is this a good thing? Is this benefiting the news that we get out as broadcasters, or is it hurting it?
Yeah, it's valid. I don't know. I'd have to think about it. I'd have to think about it.
I'm just curious. That was a little piece of news that I saw earlier this week.
Yeah, it's cool. I saw it too. It's pretty cool.
Is it? Do you use Snapchat?
I do not use Snapchat.
I don't either.
Here's why though. Only because it was banned in our house for our kids.
Smart.
So that was a non-allowed app. And so no, in fact it's probably the only major tier social media app that I don't use, at least somewhat. I'm a terrible social media. I'm like a stalker. I don't post a lot or interact a lot, but I read a lot, and the things I do say tend to get me in trouble. So I try to lay low, but these things like this podcast and other things are changing my approach. Obviously, sure. There's a lot that goes into that side of it when you're trying to start something new. So, well, I'll tell you what, that's a lot of content for one day, but I want to remind everybody again, we're going to keep building the studio together. So be on the lookout this week for 2 new videos. We'll actually be at the downtown studio location, installing the audio over IP console and configuring the engine and getting the network extended, the Axia network turned up over there this week. So we'll have a couple of videos that we'll do on that and post them to our YouTube channel. Of course, there'll also be links to it from our website at theradiotechguys.com. Most important thing you can do for us if you want to stay part of this show and connected is go to our website and subscribe to the main podcast on iTunes. Very, very important, so you don't ever miss an episode. They release Tuesday mornings. So if you can, hop over to theradiotechguys.com and subscribe to the podcast and follow our YouTube channel as well so you don't miss any of the content. What do you think?
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more.
Very good. Hey, real quick, because I almost forgot to do these. What beer are you consuming this evening?
I was going to bring it up if you didn't. Tonight, I decided, well, this is seasonal, but it's not for this season. I'm still in the Blue Moon family, drinking the First Peach Ale. Not the first. It's actually called First Peach Ale. Chris hates this.
I know what. I'm just laughing because last week you're like pumpkin spice, and this week you're bringing. Although I can't talk. Wait till you see my wine. No, it's fine. Wait till you see my wine.
I don't know. Last summer, it's still like 90 degrees here, so that's fine. Yeah. I like all Blue Moon stuff, so I love this, and yep, it's wonderful. What are you consuming?
So my wife actually picked this up for me, and I'm going to show the bottle because I like the fact that we're doing local stuff here on this show. This is from a place called West Virginia Fruit and Berry. It's Uncle Jake's elderberry wine. I'll tell you. Let me tell you about it. It is on the sweet side.
Yeah,
it's probably a little bit too sweet for me. It's almost like it needs to be refrigerated. I mean, I don't say that about red wine, but this is almost like a fruit punch, almost like it's a little bit sweet. It's very good. I mean, the quality is good, and my wife liked it.
That's
It's a little too sweet.
Looks nice in the glass.
Yeah, it's red and winey. Like, well, it's, I don't know, red and winey. All right, so next week we'll continue our topics. IP audio. We'll move in a little deeper to configuring a power station, so we can show you what we're talking about with all these IO things. We'll share the document. Download this Excel sheet if you're planning a new studio thing. I promise you, it'll help you in terms of documenting and planning your build. And send your questions in this week, please, at ask@theradiotechguys.com, and make sure you check out the website. Yeah, that's all I have, Alex.
That's all I have too, Chris.
We'll have a good. Well, I'm going to see you in like 8 hours, 10 hours, 10 hours. So we'll carry on tomorrow and see what kind of damage we can do.
Absolutely.
All right, that's episode 3. We'll see you next week.
Bye, everybody.